Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Seth Red Olive, and it's time for another edition of Against the Odds. So last week, on our Against the Odds poll, it was 5-color Hondens in Modern, coming out way ahead of everything else. It beat out Legacy Donate by about 10 percentage points, which, by Against Odds standards, is a huge blowout on the poll. So that means this week, we are heading to Modern to play a deck I'm calling Gallery of Shrines. A quick reminder before we break down the deck: if you enjoy Against the Odds and the other video content here on the site, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment. All that stuff is super helpful and a great way that you can support the site. Anyway, let's break down Gallery of Shrines in Modern. So, our deck is exclusively focused on winning with Hondens, which are these legendary enchantments with a subtype of Shrine. And these enchantments are essentially the Tron of the enchantment world. Each one does something on its own, but it does something more for each shrine we control. So take Honden of Infinite Rage, for example. This is our removal slash finisher shrine. It does a damage on our upkeep for each shrine we control to a creature or player. So if we have just the Honden of Infinite Rage, we're dealing 1 damage. Not that exciting, can ping to death a Dark Confidant and Unflipped Delver of Secrets, or deal a damage to our opponent like a Curse of the Pierced Heart or something. But what if we have 2 shrines on the battlefield, then we're shooting down a Flip Delver of Secrets, or Sulfuric Vortexing our opponent for 2 damage, plus, if that second shrine is Honden of Cleansing Fire, we're also gaining 4 life, because Honden of Cleansing Fire gains us 2 life at the beginning of our upkeep for each shrine we control. So we gain 2 for the Honden of Infinite Rage, 2 for the Honden of Cleansing Fire, 4 life. Honden of Cleansing Fire is really essential for staying alive against aggressive decks. If we get enough shrines on the battlefield, it can gain us a ton of life. On the other hand, it's not very good against control decks. If our opponent's going to kill us with an Emrakul or something, all the life in the world isn't going to really save us from Annihilate. But what if we have even more shrines? We add in Honden of Night's Reach. Now we're dealing 3 damage to a creature or player with Honden, gaining 6 life with Honden of Cleansing Fire. And because Honden of Night's Reach forces our opponent to discard a card for each shrine we control, making our opponent discard a bunch of cards. Honden of Night's Reach is essentially the opposite of Honden of Cleansing Fire. If we're playing against an aggressive deck, we really want a Honden of Cleansing Fire. If we're playing against a control deck, we really want Honden of Night's Reach. Honden of Night's Reach is one of the best Hondens against control decks, maybe the best Honden against control decks, because it makes sure our opponent can't counter our spells, essentially. They're going to have to discard their entire hand eventually, which means they can't just sit there with Cryptic Command or Remand or Mana Leak or whatever instant speed stuff. They have to play that stuff on their turn, which you can't really do with counter spells, or they're going to have to discard it on our upkeep, so the coast will be clear for us to play more shrines. But it keeps going. What if we have 4 shrines on the battlefield? We're dealing 4 damage with Honden of Infinite Rage, gaining 8 life with Honden of Cleansing Fire, almost mind-twisting our opponent's hand, 4 cards discarded to Honden of Night's Reach, and my personal favorite shrine, of course, Honden of Seeing Winds. Draw a card for each shrine you control. So Honden of Seeing Winds, I like it in just about any matchup. It's better in control matchups because it's 5 mana, so it's a little slow against aggressive decks. Unless we have Honden of Cleansing Fire, then it's still awesome. But they work off each other. The only problem with Honden of Seeing Winds is it is not a May ability, so it's possible that if we have enough shrines on the battlefield and are drawing a ton of cards each turn, we could deck ourselves in some matchups just by drawing so many cards. In practice, that's unlikely to happen because we're also drawing more shrines, so we're dealing damage with Honden of Infinite Rage and so forth. But drawing extra cards each turn is a good way to get ahead in the game. And finally, our last shrine, Honden of Life's Web. If we have all 5 Shrine Tron assembled, we are dealing 5 damage with Honden of Infinite Rage, making our opponent discard 5 cards with Honden of Night's Reach, gaining 10 life with Honden of Cleansing Fire, drawing 5 cards with Honden of Seeing Winds, and getting 5 1/1 colorless spirit tokens from Honden of Night's Web. So Honden of Life's Web is our other way of winning the game. We either shoot our opponent to death with Honden of Infinite Rage, or we just make a ton of spirit tokens and eventually have enough that we overwhelm our opponent and beat them down with 1/1s. So, the problem with shrines and Hondens, same thing, is they are legendary. And as you can see, we're playing 4 of each of them, so 20 cards, more than half of our non-land cards are shrines. And because they're legendary, if you have a single copy of any individual shrine, let's say Honden of Life's Web, if we have a Honden of Life's Web on the battlefield and we draw another Honden of Life's Web, it is a literal do nothing. It is like we did not draw a card. We can't cast it because it would just legend rule itself. So that makes it pretty bad, and it maxes out how much we can do with our shrines. We can only make 5 tokens with Honden of Life Web if we have one of each other shrine. We can only draw 5 cards, deal 5 damage, gain 10 life, make our opponent discard 5 cards, so on and so forth. Well, our deck is breaking this legendary rule with the help of Mirror Gallery. So Mirror Gallery, 5-mana artifact, very simple text. The legend rule doesn't apply. So what this means is all bets are off as far as our shrines. Once we have a shrine on the battlefield, when we draw future copies of it, it's not a dead card, it's an awesome card. So we could potentially have 4 Honden of Infinite Rages on the battlefield at the same time, and I don't even want to count the amount of damage we'd be doing, or the amount of life we'd be gaining with multiple Hondens of Cleansing Fire. It just gets super out of control. So the basic goal of this deck is to get shrines on the battlefield to stay alive, start drawing cards, generating value and advantage, and then sooner or later we're going to draw into a Mirror Gallery, and then we see how many shrines we can get on the battlefield at the same time. So we're not limited to 5 shrines. We could play 10 shrines or 15 shrines. The maximum would be 20 shrines if we had every single shrine on the battlefield. But Mirror Gallery lets us go really deep in shrines because we can ignore the legend rule and just play as many as we can get our hands on. The rest of the deck, really straightforward. I said we were pretty exclusively focused on shrines, and that is very true. Every card in our deck, it is either a shrine, Mirror Gallery to let us play more shrines, or a ramp card to let us cast our shrines earlier. The other problem with shrines is they're kind of expensive and a little bit slow. They don't trigger till our upkeep, so we essentially have to wait a turn before we get any advantage out of them. So Arbor Elf, Utopia Sprawl, and Fertile Ground not only fix our mana, but allow us to ramp into our shrines quicker. The best combo is turn 1 Arbor Elf, turn 2 Utopia Sprawl, tap the Utopia Sprawled land, untap it with Arbor Elf, tap the Utopia Sprawled land, and we can cast a 4-mana shrine on turn 2, and then, assuming we have another land drop, a 5-mana shrine on turn 3, and we can start generating that immense advantage super quickly. As far as the mana base, some fetch lands, a few forests. Everything in our deck is focused on forests because we need to equip with Utopia Sprawl, a bunch of foresty shock lands, and then 1 of each of the buddy lands that add green mana. In the sideboard, we have Rest in Peace, Stony Silence, and Rule of Law. Enchantments that hate on specific matchups. Rest in Peace, Graveyard Deck, Stony Silence, Affinity. Rule of Law, anything combo-y, looking to cast multiple spells in a turn. Sphere of Safety and Ghostly Prison. Enchantments that hate on creature decks that make it cost a lot for our opponent to attack. And then Blood Moon and Leyline of Sanctity, just general hate cards. That's the other reason we are playing a bunch of forests. We can equip our forests with our enchantments, and even though we're going to turn our other lands into mountains, if we have Fertile Grounds and Utopia Sprawls on our forests, we can still play our 5 colors of stuff, even through a Blood Moon. Leyline of Sanctity, really good against burn, anything that targets us, really. And then a couple of Detention Spheres for removal, and that is Gallery of Shrines in Modern, and I don't know if this one's actually going to work. I think it's cool, and I'm hoping that eventually we'll have like 10 shrines on the battlefield and do some awesome things. The problem is we're very dependent on Mirror Gallery, and if our Mirror Gallery gets blown up by an Ancient Grudge or a Maelstrom Pulse, all of our shrines that are duplicates on the battlefield instantly get legend ruled. All of our future shrines that are the same as ones on the battlefield don't actually do anything. So I don't know. I think we can win without Mirror Gallery. I mean, just turn 2 shrine, turn 3 shrine, turn 4 shrine, or turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 shrine is pretty powerful in some matchups. And that's the other thing with the shrines is they're super matchup dependent. So we gotta hope we draw the right shrines in the right order. Seeing Winds, Life Web, and Infinite Rage are kind of good no matter what, at least to some extent, because they help us finish the game or draw us into more shrines. There is definitely some variance there. If we draw all Honden of Night's Reach against an aggressive deck, we're probably not going to win. When if we have multiple Hondens of Cleansing Fire against Burn, we're very unlikely to lose. So we'll see how it goes. There's definitely some variance, but I think it's going to be sweet, and hopefully we get a lot of upkeep triggers and do some crazy things. I'm going to say that this deck wins 20% of the time, about 1 out of every 5 games. Like I said, the big problem is we're just leaning so hard on legendary permanents, and if we don't draw our mirror gallery, we have an infinite amount of mulligans in our deck. There's so many dead draws. But if we have our mirror gallery, it's going to be pretty sweet. So we will see. I think it's going to be fun either way, and I'm excited to give it a shot. I've never actually played Mirror Gallery before, and it's a really unique and interesting card, especially with the Shrines, to be able to play multiples, so I think it should be fun. Anyway, that has been our deck tech for Gallery of Shrines in Modern. I hope you enjoy our Against the Odds videos this week. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.